Hi, my name is Fahana. I am 22 years old, a student, and I hate driving. I know what you're thinking. How can a 22-year-old hate driving? Well, the traffic here is horrible. Parking is almost impossible to find in town, and even when you parked in a parking spot, your car is not always safe. I would very much prefer to walk, but pedestrian safety is almost non-existent here. This is me trying to cross the road. I am on a zebra crossing and no one bothered to stop for me. A total of 39 cars drove past me without stopping in this test. I counted. And once you've crossed, you might meet another obstacle. Blocked paths. Here's how an ideal situation on the road should be. Pedestrians on the top and their safety prioritized because they are the most vulnerable. Then comes the cyclists. And finally, motorized vehicles. Unfortunately, it has all gone haywire. Is it like this or like this? But most of the time, it is like this, where motorized vehicles, so-called, own the roads. But don't think the City Council have not done anything.
We launched, I think late 2015, we launched a program called Pedestrian is King campaign.
When I was a councillor in the City Council, I was the one who started this campaign and the motto of Pedestrian is King 2 years ago.
And we have done up a lot of, I think 3 pedestrian crossing without lights. We want to test the motorists whether they will stop for the pedestrian to cross.
I unfortunately have to say that it didn't get very far, even though we spent 200,000 ringgit on the campaign. I don't think it achieved what we were setting out to achieve.
But the campaign is not that successful because the attitude of general public is that they don't stop in those pedestrian crossing without lights.
Of course, it's the first step, but I think it was not very successful.
But we also noticed there are some motorists, they're quite nice. We see some people stop for that. Before that, they was like, no. So the campaign, have some minimal impact. The whole idea is to give back the rights to pedestrians.
Everyone has different ideas on how to overcome this issue. One believes education through schools to create awareness on pedestrian safety.
Schools where we should start this safety awareness campaign.
Another one believes we need to take education as a whole different approach.
Education means telling people new ideas.
And then there's town planning.
I think on the whole, it comes from planning downwards. So if you don't plan for neighborhoods where there's traffic calming, then you can imagine that the roads will just the roads are made for the cars to go through. Yeah. So then you try to mitigate by telling school children. I don't think that works. I think it has to be town planning.
And finally, psychology.
The Penang Island, where there's space constraints, you get roads designed in all sorts of funny ways. And so as a driver here, you relearn from whatever you learn from after you got your driving license, you relearn to adapt to the situation. And the situation is such that you have to push your way through. Otherwise, people will say that you don't push your way through, you're never going to get anywhere. When you release them on the roads, what is the environment? Is it an environment that is well planned for them, where obedience is rewarded, or disobedience is rewarded? Right now, because you have to push your way through in order to cope with the driving, disobedience is awarded, obedience is not awarded.
Let Fahana, the psychology student, explain to you. Behaviorism. It started out with this guy, but more notably by B.F. Skinner, who formulated the Skinner box, which is a rat that pushes down a lever for food. And then there's Ivan Pavlov with classical conditioning, which is the salivating dog. I don't want to go into details, but here's how it works on the road. Say there's a traffic jam. One impatient driver decides to cut the queue, which is a disobedience. And when the driver gets away with it, he is awarded by getting to his destination a little quicker. One way to stop this is to have a police officer to stop them. But more often than not, there isn't one. Or if there is one, the driver just cuts in the line before the police officer can catch them and they get away with it. Remember Pavlov and his salivating dog? If the driver carries out with this and gets away with it, he is conditioned to think this is the way to drive. So in a way, the driver is a salivating dog. No offense to Blue Myvi drivers, this car is just striking enough for the example. But even with all the different opinions, everyone agrees on one thing, which is
Good enforcement.
Enforcement.
Interestingly, last year when I was in Sri Lanka at a pedestrian crossing, the motorists do slow down. So I asked the driver, why is that the case? And he said that they have now a rule that if you are caught infringing on the law at a pedestrian crossing, you are automatically hauled up to court.
There's often a reluctance in putting pedestrian traffic lights where it's convenient for pedestrians. They will put pedestrian traffic lights where there is minimal impact on cars. So they want to reduce the time that cars have to stop. They want to reduce inconvenience to the cars.
dilemma. So I'm doing a documentary on pedestrian safety, and now I can't figure out how to cross the road because I don't know where is the zebra crossing. It's actually kind of annoying that where I want to cross is in between two zebra crossings, so I have to walk to one of them, and I don't know which one is closer, but I'm gonna walk to the one that I can kind of see. Found the zebra crossing. Now let's see how many people actually stop. Pretty sure no one is gonna stop.
It takes so much more effort, so much more discomfort for a pedestrian to walk a further distance than a car to be slightly inconvenienced by the location of a pedestrian traffic lights.
In Bangkok, at big streets, which are something like at least 6 lanes, all right, I crossed once, and they had flags, small flags, put on both sides of the street. So a pedestrian crossing just has to take that flag from that little container, and then she will flag or he will flag, and the motorist kind of like stop or slow down.
I'll try to test whether the car stop for me or not if I cross it.
Go ahead.
Okay?
Okay.
There's no car here.
And I mean, this is something that I proposed to the council, and my councillors just poo-poo it, and until today, 6 years later or 5 years later, they don't do it.
Carry a flag, red flag.
No. There are not many cars, but don't stop.
Yeah, you're supposed to look at left and right before you walk. But I can see you looking left and right all the time.
Yeah. It's not safe. It's not safe.
I mean, this is so simple, so cheap, and they won't do it. Rather, they will spend $100,000 ringgit to put up a traffic light. Do you know it costs 100,000 ringgit to put up a traffic light at the pedestrian crossing? How many traffic lights are you going to put?
But this is a thing we need to improvise. We are putting the lights here. We're putting the push button. It's a busy street.
To me, I think there's a cultural factor in walkability. You like to walk where there are lots of trees, or you like to walk where, like in the 5-foot way, or, in the historic center. I never get tired walking because there's always something to look at, there's something to look forward to, And, this is really a place where you can encourage people to walk. Looks like an Aladdin's cave.
Yeah.
If you ask me to walk, the half the day in the World Heritage Site, I don't feel tired.
Georgetown is planned for the people to walk, originally. That's why we have kaki lima.
When you have weather like this, it's good that you have a 5-foot way, right? Then you can
walk on the
5-foot
rain.
way. Yeah.
So you see, like all those small kids, if you have 5-foot way, they can walk along the 5-foot way. They don't have to walk on the street. Is this a bus station? Oh yeah, there is. But see, there are 2 buses.
Look, the backside, can you see? Okay, come on, see. The backside is hanging over the pedestrian. This is what we're talking about.
Oh, okay.
So the bus.
We cannot have it here.
First of all, the taxi and the car shouldn't be here, right? So the bus is right in the middle of the road. It's like when you're trying to cross the road, then you have to breathe in the fumes of the bus, and you have to wait for the bus to leave before you can actually use the pedestrian crossing.
Those flower pot, those potted concrete pots, is it there? So that one we have asked them to the association, the Tokong, to take that one out. because people have to walk on the street. So that one, you see. So now people have to walk on the street. Last time used to be a
There was a fence, right?
fence, and also the one illegal structure here.
Illegal. Yeah, that's right. You can still see in the Google Street View.
You can still see in Google, yeah. So now it's clear pathway. See, because this is the main route for the Rapid Penang. To walk on the street is quite dangerous. See how fast this bus is.
So the 5-foot way is an innovation which is very unique in the tropics, because when you're in the shop house, it's very cool, and when you go out into the street, it's hot. But when you go out, you step out into the 5-foot way, it allows your body to adapt. It's a kind of mid-range, thermal comfort. Okay. Then after that, you go out into the street. So there's a lot of wisdom in creating this 5-foot way. We should learn from it. We shouldn't be throwing it out because of modernization. Everybody started to own a car, and we forgot that it was forgotten. And it was just assumed that all these shop houses will be rebuilt, all the roads will be set back, people will be using cars. But now we know that that's an impossibility, because you get so much congestion, you get heat from the roads, and you have all this global warming now, which is a major concern. So we really have to go back to walking and cycling and using 5-foot ways.
I think we have done quite an achievement to clear all this blockage for people to walk.
Now that we've heard of what is being done to try and improve walkability, let's hear the voices of the young, college students.
I walk pretty often, usually from college to the shopping malls or around my house.
I rarely walk. It's not because I'm lazy to walk, it's because that I'm aware of the risk of walking.
I drive more than I walk. Well, it depends on the distance also. If it's short distance, I would walk.
The road itself is made to cater to the cars and to the bikes more than to the pedestrian themselves.
There's a lot of car here, and the way that people drive is crazy. That's why you have these phobias and all. The only thing that I like about walking is that in the town area like Georgetown, you can see a lot of people, a lot of things, the heritage. What I dislike is that I have actually no place to walk properly most of the time. You mostly have to walk on the road, so that's very difficult. They need to have like a special pedestrian like the street, because most of the pedestrian street doesn't look like a legit one, because at the end like some cars or what might park there, and then you are not able to walk there. You have to think about what is the proper way to do a good sidewalk for people to walk. Actually our road crossings in Malaysia are very, very few, so people have to end up like jaywalking, like just simply crossing the road. And then if there are proper road crossings, people don't stop.
When I'm pedestrian, I think cars should give way. But when I driving, I expect pedestrian to be smart. I don't know. So to answer the question, I say drivers should be careful of the pedestrians. Yeah, but at the same time, pedestrians should be smart lah. Like you don't jaywalk and stuff lah. Yeah.
I'm a driver myself, but when I started to walk, when I started to use public transportation, I can see that how ignorant the drivers actually really are. That's the saddest thing to see, to be honest. It's more about what we can do and how the drivers, especially in Malaysia and Penang specifically, they should change the way they should change their perspective. Like the road is used for everyone, not just for the cars and the bikes. It's for everyone.
If you think pedestrian safety is not important to you, think again.
Yeah.
When Miss Fu got run down, it was frustrating for me because I feel that to date, even after the accident, it's so much easier for people to just say that it's not the local authorities' fault for the women's death. The motorcyclist ran through a red light. Yes, the direct effect is the motorcyclist ran through the red light. But indirectly, the speed of vehicles going down the road, the volume of vehicles going down the road, the safety, comfort for pedestrians, is affected by your city planning, the design of your roads, the design of the urban environment, sidewalks, and then the lack of police enforcement as well. So there's actually a lot of other factors that contributes to why that accident happened. It's not just because of the motorcyclist that ran through the red light. Everyone else has a role to play as well.
Pedestrian safety is something that's very important, and it's on all of us. And I mean all of us, to try and make this triangle right side up again. So what are you going to do the next time you see a pedestrian at a crossing? Are you going to ignore them, or are you going to stop?